agreeing to do this introduction, I was reminded that I need to practice the KISS principle, that I need to keep the introduction sweet and short. And if I do not do that, I will see a raised finger from Father Jerry. Anyhow, our good Father Jerry, I'm really honored to do this introduction. And he's someone that my wife and myself, we have known him for over 35 years. Father Jerry, as he's affectionately known, has deep Jamaican and Irish roots. He looks cool, and he is indeed cool, because he's originally from the cool climes of Mandeville. Now, Father Jerry was ordained as a priest 40 years ago, and he was the first priest to be ordained in our diocese, and that's an achievement. And Father Jerry, in his usual quiet way, celebrated those 40 years earlier this year. Am I right? Okay. Now, Father Jerry has a doctorate degree in theology, and he's so unassuming about it, from the Union Theological Union in Berkeley, California. And he has a master's degree in history from Harvard University. He loves Jamaica, and he loves Jamaican, and he's very passionate about our history. He treats our history in a very analytical way, and he looks at it and he sees God in our history unfolding day by day. There is no one better qualified than Father Jerry to do this presentation, and we all know him. He was here with us in the 70s and again in the 90s. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Father Jerry, someone who prepared my wife and myself for marriage over 35 years ago, and it was a landmark preparation, something that we referred to from time to time. So my brothers and sisters, without further ado, I hope it was short and sweet, I present to you no other than Father Dr. Gerald Reed. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. There is a deep connection between what goes on here in this building every Sunday morning and what went on in every person that Jamaica has named a national hero. Every Sunday, men and women, younger and older, are moved to come together in this place. And in so coming together, they are the latest link in a chain that stretches back to the last meal of Jesus and that is a point of location for future links that are now being forged by the Spirit in the hearts of persons not known to us. Future links that will reach generation by generation all the way to the great banquet that will be the culmination of God's work of building his kingdom in its fullness. Right here, every Sunday morning. What is moving these men and women, younger and older, to come together in this place each Sunday? Whatever each of them might think or understand, whatever the circumstances that they are conscious of that make them decide to come in and through, behind and beyond all those circumstances is the real driving force, which is the Spirit of God. That air-like, A-I-R, air-like power that is the love of the Father embodied and revealed in the Son. And why is the Spirit moving them so? So that they can call to mind. Those three words are very important. It's a technical term the church uses. Call to mind. The way God is. Present tense. And that way has been revealed in Jesus Christ to us human beings 2,000 years ago, and is experienced by each and all of us as what the church calls the unity of the Holy Spirit. The way the Holy Spirit is pressing us from within and between ourselves to come together in mutual and respectful harmony with each other and with God. Unity of the Holy Spirit. How does coming together in this way each Sunday give us the opportunity or the occasion to call to mind how God is, according to how Jesus shows us? On Sundays, when we assemble for Eucharist, after settling down with the introduction, and after being reminded of the really big picture we are all part of in the liturgy of the Word, like two disciples on the road to Emmaus, when Jesus puts their understanding of their life, which was depressing them, in the big picture, their hearts burn within them, because now they see all the connections. So after being reminded of the really big picture we are part of in the liturgy of the Word, and after putting ourselves, each of us present, and all of us human beings, now in Montego Bay, in Jamaica, in the world, creation, putting all of us on the table in the gifts of bread and wine. A gift is yourself. You're putting yourself on the table, putting us on the table. This is who we are now. After that, the priest, the presider, leads us in the thanksgiving prayer, the great Eucharistic prayer. And in the heart of that prayer, we hear the words, "This is my body, given for you." Then we hear the words, "This is my blood, poured out for you all, so that sins might be forgiven." Watch that tail end. This is my blood poured out for you, so that sins might be forgiven. Then follow the words, "Do this in memory of me." Words can mean nothing, or they can mean everything. It all depends on whether or not the words, which are signs, point to what really goes on. If what they point to not goes so, then it's a waste of time. But if what they point to goes so, then the words have power. These words are the words of Jesus. received and held precious from the very first generation of his followers to us today. And Jesus is serious about what he says. He said what he meant, and he meant what he said. Let us take a closer look. Let us start from the bottom. Let's start with the word memory. Each of us comes into this world through birth, and we are leaving it through physical death. I hope that's not news to you. And all we are going to leave to others who remain behind us in this world after we are gone will be their memory of us. And in that memory, and especially in their cultivation of that memory, will lie the power of our lives in their lives. Now, we human beings nowadays often enter into or cultivate or deepen the memory of a person who was significant to us and who has now died in different ways. We get together sometimes with music and food and talk. Sometimes the dead is just an excuse for the food and drink and thing, yeah, and the tiffin or whatever is available. Or it might be a meditative, prayerful gathering at a place or around the objects connected with the person or maybe the death of the person. Or it might be a scholarship or a building with their name on it or attached to it, or a statue of them. Now such memorials or memorializing are ways of getting more and more involved with the persons and the power in and of their lives. That's what we're trying to do. Jesus was not interested in anything like that. He was interested in his memory. Obviously, he brings it up. Do this in memory of me. But he wasn't interested in those kinds of memories or those kinds of memorializations. The memory that Jesus wanted was very different. It was generation after generation of individuals and peoples from all walks of life, all over the world. Anybody, in fact, who allowed themselves to come together with others and with God the way Jesus came together with others and with the Father. Anybody who allowed themselves to be moved in that way and to live focused on that way would embody the power of Jesus in the world. They would be his memory. Human beings who allowed Jesus' way to inspire and guide and open up the length and breadth, the height and the depth, to quote Ephesians, of their ways of coming together. When any person or persons allow themselves to be so moved, to be moved out from ways of thinking and living and relating that are dead-ended, getting you nowhere, and not good enough, and to be moved to come together with others into a Jesus-inspired and sustained way of thinking and living and relating, you are bodying forth Christ. You become members of his body in the world. You become church. That's what the root word of church in the Greek, in the New Testament, is ecclesia. I mentioned this to you before. And ecclesia is like ecclesiastical, that's where we get that word in English, meaning of the church. And the word ecclesia in Greek comes from two words, the ek and the klesia part. The ek part means out, and the klesia part is its roots in the word to be called. So when a person feels called or moved to come out from their way of thinking and living because they're getting nowhere, they're not happy, they're not satisfied, and say, must come in as something else that is better, this Jesus guided thing. That movement is church, is the spirit of Jesus and the Father. And when it happens consciously, and you enter into a community of a come-together community that is consciously following Jesus, then you are technically in what we call church. But any human being, in any circumstance, that is being moved to come out from ways of thinking that are dead-ended and not good, and move to look for some better way of living, that movement is also church. It might not be self-consciously church, but it's church. Anybody who's not against me is for me. You have to be very sensitive here. But it's the movement that you have to watch. But let us go even deeper than that. Inside this Jesus way of coming together with others and with the Father, let's go inside that. Only Jesus and the Father can know what is inside Jesus and inside his way. Only the Father and Jesus. And anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal it. This is precisely what Jesus did at the last meal before he dies. He reveals what is inside, his way of living with the Father and with others. This is precisely what he summarizes in the words that are at the heart of the Eucharistic prayer. His way of living, which is now leading to his way of dying, in his way of giving his body for you. You, my disciples and apostles, you all people, you all creation, you anybody and everybody, because the Father lets his sun shine on the good and the bad alike, lets his rain fall on the good and the good bad and bad alike. Be perfect as the Heavenly Father is perfect. Here's how you do it. You live in the midst of people, in your body, you're immersed with them. Once you find yourself alive in the world, you're immersed already. You can't go back into mommy's womb. You may like to crawl back up in there, but you can't. You have to keep moving. And you have to keep moving through a whole series of unknowns in your life until you reach the really big unknown, which is life beyond all the stages in this world, in the great mystery of death that you have to pass through. But that immersion means that life is coming at you. It is manifesting itself to you, and you have to decide how you're going to react to what is showing itself to you, whatever the situation you get into. And Jesus himself will talk. He doesn't talk in very elaborate terms, but he talks in very tight, summarizing terms about his immersion. And I don't have time to expand on that tonight. I've mentioned it to you before. But when he has that little exchange after kicking over the money changers, and they ask him about where he got his authority from, and his response is to bring up the baptism of John the Baptist. And he has what looks like a little game with them. What he's really doing is he's saying, my authority for acting as I do comes from what I experienced when I was immersed, not just in the waters of the Jordan, but in the waters of human history and life. And if you stop and think about it, well, before I say that, Eastern Christians understand this much more than we Western Christians do. Eastern Christians, unlike us, do not separate the feast of the baptism of Jesus from the feast of the Epiphany. We split the two of them. We have the three wise men, and then we have the baptism of and the immersion of Jesus, the baptism of Jesus. They don't do that. They keep the baptism of Jesus and the Epiphany together. When Jesus, for them, is immersed in the waters of the Jordan and he comes up, because he has been immersed in the human reality, the way it is in the real world with real people. The heavens open and you hear the voice of the Father, you see the dove coming, and this is the Son. Because of the way the love of God is embodied, you have the Trinity in human experience and history and life. So immersion causes the manifestation in response to what he is going on. And if you stop and think about it in your own life, think of any relationship you're in, I don't care what the relationship is, and put up your hand if you think I'm wrong in what I'm about to say. It's only after you get into a relationship you realize what you got yourself into. Tell me if I'm wrong. You get in, and then little by little it becomes clear what you got yourself into. And you have to decide, Am I going to stay or not? Some people say, no, I didn't sign on for this, me gone. And then there's no relationship. But if you stay, even in the best of relationships, there are going to be those times when it's going to get rough. That's just life. Sickness, tragedy, all kind of something. So you can't be faithful in a relationship as it manifests its details over time unless you're prepared to bleed. In other words, to suffer. So watch that language of Jesus. When he talks about, this is my body given for you, he's talking not in abstraction. He's not an idea. He is physically present in and through each of our lives and all our circumstances and conditions. But so Jesus goes further. He doesn't just say, this is my body, the way I embody my life, what I have and who I am. I don't keep them for myself, I give them for you. I allow you to do with them what you need me to do with them in order to love you. In other words, you will shape my life, you'll affect my body. You can reach me. You can talk about you love somebody, but if you don't come home at night, there's nobody there. It's an abstraction. You can't love if you don't have the body. And the same is true of God with us. And he says, you have my body. He goes further. Jesus is embodying this way of the Father's love. Is an embodying, a living in and through his body in the world that suffers. That's why he goes from, this is my body, given for you, right away he goes to, this is my blood, poured out for you. This is Jewish sacrificial language. In Jewish liturgy, you have the body here, and you have blood next to it. Symbolism, common sense. If you see a body here, and you see blood next to it, what runs through your mind? Everybody always say that. They're not necessarily dead, but something wrong with it. Everybody go for dead right away. I notice that. Everywhere I ask this question, first thing about the people, then dead. Well, but they're not necessarily dead, but there's something wrong with it. It's suffering. And that is the point in that kind of language, in Jewish liturgical language, and in Christian Eucharistic language. God in Jesus is saying, this is my body, I am with you physically, but no, it is a bleeding body, it is suffering. So he tells us it's suffering. And he doesn't tell us regretfully. He goes further, and he accepts this need to suffer, because that is the only way he can stay with us, human beings, they know it already, working to change us from bad to good, from good to better, and from better to best. That's why you notice he says, this is my blood, which is poured out for you, so that sins might be forgiven, so that you can be transformed. You know, we talk about how God is willing to forgive sins and so, which is true, but there's a cost to God. And I mean, all of us have a taste of that. Again, go back to any relationship you're in, whatever it is, parent, child, spouses, bishop and priest, clergy, whatever, grandparents, it's the same. If you're going to be serious about really sticking it out with people as opposed to sticking it to people, then you have to be prepared to suffer. It doesn't mean you're looking for suffering. No, that's a different thing. Jesus is not asking you to go look for suffering, but he's asking you to be real with real people in the real world, whatever happens. And if you're going to be faithful in that sense, I'm there for you. You have to be prepared to suffer. So you're going to bleed. That's what he's saying. So it is trustworthy love. Because that's the big question you have in your mind. Are you going to be with me when the going gets tough? What price are you willing to pay? And here he says, and remember now, this is something we do every Sunday. We call this to mind in fact, every time I go to Eucharist, but I'm emphasizing Sunday Eucharist, and I have a reason for doing that. Every time I go to Eucharist, we call to mind, I saw God stay, I saw God stay, I saw God stay, I saw God stay. He goes further and accepts this need to suffer because that is the only way he can stay with us, working to change us from bad to good, from good to better, and from better to best. In other words, so that sins might be transformed, forgiven. And that's the way he changes the world. And I just want to make a quick allusion here. St. Paul, in 1 Corinthians, I think it's 7, when Paul uses an expression, it's a different context. He wasn't talking about what I'm talking about, but the expression is very powerful. Paul says, the world as we know it is passing away. So that's what the translation says. But I think if you really understand more deeply that the reason it's moving is because God is in it, trying to get it to go in a certain direction and trying to get human beings to cooperate with him, to move it in a certain direction. A more accurate translation of the hidden thought in that expression is the world as we know it is being transformed away. It's changing from this into that because this is not good. Which I'm hinting where we should be in that move with God. But because of it, Jesus emphasizes then his willingness to suffer, God's willingness to suffer. That is why we proclaim, as Paul says, proclaim, a very strange word, the death of the Lord. We proclaim the death. He said, wait, why are we proclaiming the death? Because, why does he die? He doesn't die because I'm not nothing better to do. He dies because in making the decision that I am not moving, I am coming into your life and I'm not coming out. Because he won't come out, he will suffer, and he will suffer in that way, and he will die in that way. The death of Jesus therefore shows God's faithfulness, and that is what you are proclaiming. Nothing can, and St. Paul will put it in this language, writing to the church in Rome. Famously, you'll remember it when I started. Nothing can separate us from the love of God manifest in Jesus Christ. And he goes on a whole list of nothing, nada, zero, zilch. I don't care what it is. And that is one of those verses I hold on to tight. Because sometimes you say, but this is not so bad. God. You hear me? Nothing. This is Pope Francis' struggle to get people in the church to understand that. Nothing can make God stop loving us. It don't mean that God agrees with everything we do. Don't mean that God isn't upset, but it means that God will never abandon us. That is what mercy means. But it's not cheap. It's very expensive for God. But that shows the value he places on us. And stick that word in the back of your mind too. It's going to pop up when I talk about the heroes and Jamaica. The value that when Jesus looks at anybody and everybody, he sees something that is so valuable to him that he is prepared to do all of this for them. Them same people who I'm in a business with. That's why I'm going to swing around and come at us with the last judgment. Whatsoever you do to the least, you do to me. You don't understand how me feel about them. You need to get this clear. Faith means you have to struggle to trust that love of God, because that's not how we think. But your ways are not my ways. And I am the way, the truth, and the life. So you pay attention. That is why we proclaim the death of the Lord. Jesus' readiness to pay the price of suffering, if that is what staying with us demands, shows that God is faithful. And that's why he uses the language, this love now, the way I embody it, the way I'm prepared to suffer in this body because of you, because you demand that of me, is the new and eternal covenant. Nothing else coming. Nothing else can pass this. Nothing can never be out. Nothing can be bigger than this. This is the heart of what we call to mind each Sunday. Every single Sunday. That's the core. From God to us, through Jesus, through the way of living together in the liturgical signs of the church in its life. This is revelation. This is God shining a light on our lives and saying, I know you don't see it, but this is what's going on inside there. I am there with you, but this is the kind of a God. You know, each year during the liturgical year, we have two major cycles, the Christmas cycle and the Easter cycle. In the Christmas cycle, the focus is Emmanuel. God is with us. La la la, everybody, God is with us. Beautiful. What kind of God? God doing what? How is God with us? That's where Easter comes in. It's not necessarily pretty. Easter is Christmas, God is with us. Easter, how is God with us? Now you're getting it with Jesus. Anything less than that, really, if you stop and think about it, really, we're nothing in the real world. So it's revelation. It's showing us the dynamism. When we say God is everywhere with everybody, this is what is in with everybody. This is the content. The mystery. Which doesn't mean you can't know it. It means you can never know it enough. This is the mystery that is at the heart of our life. Let us turn now to Jamaica. And I like to put that word in quotation marks, because for me, Jamaica is more an experience than a place. It's a place. You can check it on the map. But what is important is not the geography, it's the history. In other words, is not the place, it's what happened in the place. What happened to people and how did they respond. That is more important. So let us turn to Jamaica and to our national heroes and look for the connection between what I have just said about God and Jesus and these people we call heroes, and by implication then, that's the connection with our own lives as Jamaicans. There is a reason why Sam Sharp could look into life around him and life as reflected in the pages in that library called the Bible. So he's looking around him, Jamaica in the 1820s. He dies in 1832, in his 20s. But he's looking around, and he's obviously very bright and intelligent and gifted. He's looking into life. And he's also reading and looking for life in the big picture. And one of the available resources was the Bible, which is a library, remember, not a book. So there's a reason why Sam Sharp could look into life around him and life as reflected in the pages of that library called the Bible and find this passage and come to say that this was one of his favorite passages in the entire library called the Bible. Galatians 5:1. For freedom, Christ has set you free. Stand firm, therefore, and do not submit again to a yoke of slavery. If may I ask some of you if you find Galatians 5, you could have found it. Sam Sharp find it though. And not only find it, I mean think about it and meditate on it, and he discovered the connection between it and what was going on in their life. And he would talk about Christ down the street on the gallows. The life and death business for him. You know what I mean? Not that serious. For him, is life and death. Sharp looked into the life that was brought together around him and his generation. And him consider life, consider things, looking at it. A life that was organized against them. A life that was designed to keep them down and out of life. A life in which they were treated as nothing and nobody. A life that was no life for them and people like them. A life that made life impossible for them. This did not make any sense to Sharp and his companions. Something was wrong with that picture. It was not reality. No matter how big and powerful were the people or the groups in Jamaica, in Britain, big countries around the area. No matter how big and powerful were the people saying it, that it was reality. It's as far as you go and get, you don't know nobody, you don't know nothing. Sharp and his companions came together, watch those two words, in a different way for a different purpose. They came together to emphasize possibility in the face of impossibility, to emphasize possibility for them and for people like them, and indeed for all people. And they refused to back down. That was reality. There is a confrontation between reality and unreality. Unreality carried the swing. Reality was struggling to surface. That was reality for that generations for 300 years before Sharp could sense. From the first generation of enslaved Africans, systematically herded into thinking that they were nobodies and nothings, cut off, not just from their ancestral roots and cultures, but from any meaning and value in their new environment except what their master class decided to give them. You know nothing. You know nobody. I don't care if your father was the king of the Congo. You know nothing. And your children have no value. Sell them off. You're what Orlando Patterson calls a genealogical isolate. Are you one? Are you one in the world? And I control you, says the master class. These first generations said, no. No to that way of coming together in this place that is Jamaica. No. It's not right. It's not real. And that's how it's supposed to go. They demanded to be accepted and treated as human beings, subject to fair laws and remuneration for their labor, able to create and raise families, and willing to build a human society with the strange and estranging peoples who brought them together in this place. It was a strike, basically. This demand was for freedom. What does the word freedom mean? It means possibility. And then you hear that word freedom, say possibility. It means more life. So think of what Jesus means when he says, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full or more abundantly. Open up possibilities. Think of Ephesians. That Paul prays that your life will be opened up to the full length and breadth, the height and the depth. Open up possibility. That's the word they use very often now when the scholars thinking about life is flourishing. It's supposed to flourish. Think about your own life, personally, your family, your business, whatever. You want it to flourish. You don't want it to look like it's not gone away. That's impossibility. You want possibility. So they're demanding freedom, possibility. This is the foundation on which Sharp and his generation built among themselves and between themselves and those dominating the society. And looking, let me just add something here that I came across recently from, again, Orlando Patterson, who, as many of you know, is one of the world's really top scholars on the study of freedom and the relationship with slavery. That human beings discover what freedom is because they know what slavery is and they don't like it. But Patterson says, talking about us in Jamaica and slave societies, and Jamaica was one of those slave societies that was unusual, that it was 90% slave. Normally, most countries in the world have had slavery at one time or another, but usually it's a minority. But Jamaica and these 90% majority slave. He says in these kinds of societies, you have three classes of persons, three categories. You have the masters, the slave owners. And for them, life is all about domination, controlling, power over people. Then you have the slaves, The master class is very tiny. Then you have the majority slave population, and for them, life is about getting out of slavery. Emancipation is what they want. Not domination, emancipation. Then he says you have this minority. It's a larger number than the master class, but not as big as the slave group. And those are the free people. Like in the case of Jamaica, some of them are Africans, they are black free people and other categories. But they were never slaves. Then he says, when he researches the word freedom, no, for them, for the free people, they view themselves as the beloved. In other words, everybody should be in that category. Think of Martin Luther King. What's you struggling for? The beloved community. Think of Jesus, or the transfiguration, or the baptism of Jesus. This is my son, the beloved. Watch that word, beloved. Patterson says, and this is the first I came across it, that when he researched the word freedom in different languages around the world, and you check out the roots in the most ancient languages, the word freedom is connected with the word beloved. So it's a longing to be, or belonging, to belong. To be free is to belong. You're part of everything. The beloved community, those that are part of the household, the family. It's a beautiful thing, but it's something to think about. Now imagine in a slave society like Jamaica, you have these free people, the beloved, the ones who belong, they're not slaves. Then you have the small master class that dominate everybody. Then you have the majority slaves that want to be free. What? Just put yourself in their shoes. The significance of, this is the beauty of Sharp. What are your choices? Ideally, you want, if you're a slave, you want to become part of a community that is beloved too. So it's one big beloved community. Master class now want that, they want to control everybody. To hell with beloved community. We belong everybody. Free people, you would think they would be, well, we know what it feels like to belong, but some of them don't want no more people coming in the beloved community. So it's not so simple, it gets very complicated. Then even among the slaves, and this is the original sin of Jamaica, even among the majority emancipated people, black people in Jamaica, when they were looking at whether or not they could come together to struggle together on the basis of their common culture which they had created and maybe take over the country like Haiti and run it, which could have happened. They failed. You know why they failed? They failed because the house slave and the fee slave couldn't get on. The whites thought about it too when the Americans were struggling for independence. Maybe we should join them and become free too. And then they said, but if we're going to have to send troops, we have to send them black people. So if we can send the black people as troops, we have to promise them something. We're going to promise them, say they're going to be free. No, sir, no bother with that. So there's total failure in the Jamaican psyche on both sides, white and black. And the failure is the failure to accept the humanity of one another. You see the prekaway, huh? Are we still in it? That's where Sharp is so important, because him step out beyond it. He says, no, I am not going, we're not supposed to be confined in here, so we must come together, and it's freedom for everybody. And he's going to get resistance from the master class, he's going to get resistance even from fellow blacks, he's going to get resistance from free people, but that's his vision. And he ties it with the will of God. Come see Galatians 5, what God wants. The same God who say, come in at Jesus for freedom. And we know what I mean. Christ has set us free. Do not submit to this business here, where we surround you. Do not submit to this yoke of slavery. And they say, if you don't stop, we're going to kill you. You say, well, kill me because that is what life is about. It doesn't get any clearer in the history of Jamaica what our goal is. Right down here, so. In the square that bears his name. So this is the demand that this is the demand that shaped how Sharp and his companions embodied their lives. This was a way of living that they could pour themselves into. They can live for this and they can die for this. This is life. Nothing else is worth it. And they could experience fulfillment. Now I'm alive, I'm a human being, I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm a somebody. Within themselves and inspire those around them to pull themselves together in a way that promises ever more possibility for all. This is the beauty and importance of Sharp and his generation. That was what Sharp could hear Jesus applauding. For freedom, Christ has set you free. Stand firm, therefore, and do not submit again to a yoke of slavery. Sharp was getting support, confirmation from within himself. I me that, and I me this. And from others around him, yes, I we that, and I we this. And from the God of the Bible, embodied in human form in Jesus. Sharp knew he was right. He must act no matter what the cost. This was who he was and who they were. This was the way to come together. Watch those two words. Within and between ourselves as human beings. Sharp was clear. He wasn't stupid. He was clear about the resistance and clear about the price he might have to pay. You know the famous line, I would rather die on yonder gallows than remain a slave. Not just for himself, for them, for us, for you, for me, for humanity, for life. This is where Sharp and his companions in and for freedom come together with God as revealed in Jesus. This is my body given. This is my blood poured out, so that sins might be forgiven. The great sin of man's humanity to man. Right down there, so Sam Sharp Square. That's a Eucharistic place, Sam Sharp Square. The Eucharist writ large in human history and in Jamaican history, right down there. So. This is the ecclesial core, the church heart of Jamaica. The coming together heart, the Eucharistic heart of Jamaicans shaping life and history. This is the core into which Marcus Garvey will later drill and build his own convictions. After the martyrdom of Sharp and his companions, in the square right down there, and above all, after the savage repression of the subsequent attempt of Bogle and the generation of 1865 to pick up the baton, Jamaica never again has the kind of mass demand for inclusive possibility that had been developing up to and into the generations of Sharp and Bogle. Don't have time to go into that this evening, but the 1860s, for instance, tremendous meetings all over Jamaica discussing the conditions of the society and insisting at the meetings, point by point, what should be changed in order to make the life better for all people. Better than any political meeting you have nowadays. No, not like that, no. Nothing like that. So after Sharp and Bogle and the repression, Jamaica never again has that kind of mass demand for inclusive possibility. What we have, though, is a hidden come-together spirit, which is born of that foundation. When you live your life at all, there's a power to how you live. You know that? That's your spirit. Hello, you know that? What do we do? You live, you have influence, this power, and you don't even realize you have it. Because you can't see it, that's why I call it spirit. It's like air. But it's real. And it is connected to the way you are, but it is not completely exhausted by the way you are. You don't completely control it. But that's your spirit. And that's true of individuals, true of generations. So that whole foundation generation has released a spirit in the Jamaican people. It's a come-together spirit. That's why you see people always trying to throw a partner, try again, constantly struggling to come together. And you say, but it's not making no sense, nothing can happen. I said, they're going to try, do a thing. It's in us. And that's where it comes from. I mean, God is involved, but in terms of human activity and the human role and the human character and the Jamaican character, that is what shapes that Jamaican spirit, that come together spirit. And it is irrepressible. But it wanders around after the repression of 1865, confused throughout the everyday life of our people, not recognizing its full value and power to shape life locally, globally. People abroad, these big countries, don't know how to come together and live well. You see America with you know? They don't know. And this is what I'm sensing at Jamaica. There's something about us, but they don't know what it is. May I tell you what it is? Is the come together spirit. But we don't know how to handle it. Some people know how to handle it. Both know how to handle it well. And parents and such around them, and it come out in a shape and form that penetrate the world. You see it in Garvey, you see it in Marley. It's there. But most of it, we don't know how to do with it. But it has global significance. I go further, it has cosmic significance. What do I mean by cosmic? Whatever is out there in universes beyond this one, human beings are sending probes. They're planning to colonize up there. Looking for life forms up in the cosmos. We're not talking about heaven yet, you know. We're not reached the cosmos we're talking about. Now, if you were a life form up there someplace, and you know how we treat one another on this planet, especially what we know in Jamaica, how human beings stay and how we can treat one another, and you hear the way I come, what would your reaction be? My point in saying that is that Jamaicans have a very serious role to play in influencing how people act on this planet, because they're going to influence life beyond this planet. We need to get our act together for our own sake, but for humanity's sake, because they don't know what they're doing. And then, of course, the bigger picture is the kingdom of God. What's the kingdom of God? It's life doing the kinds of things the Father wants. What is that? Everybody living in mutual and respectful harmony. Same thing. Just do the one thing Him tell you, and you take care of everything. Seek first the kingdom. Do what I tell you, and everything else will fall into place. There's a reason why I tell you this is fundamental. It's not everything, but it fertilizes everything. It is a foundation under everything. Now, it is that spirit which we don't appreciate, but it is in our people. And that spirit reminds us constantly that we are a people who feels it and who therefore knows it, but we are not certain what to do about what we feel and what we know. And that's the problem there. We're not so sure what to do about what we well and know. And this is where Garvey is very important, because you have that spirit out there all over the place, but Garvey gives it focus. How does he do it? He sends us a signal. What is the signal that Garvey sends? Well, you can read. Garvey wrote a lot. You can try and study him and so on. But I have a much simpler way at coming to what point Garvey makes to Jamaicans. The most important signal, I think, sent to us Jamaicans since 1865 is a key signal sent to us by Marcus Garvey. In insisting, what does the word insist mean? You have a choice? What does the word insist mean? If you insist on something. In insisting that everywhere his UNIA, what's the UNIA? It's a test. Universal, I'm always made a mistake there. Universal Negro Improvement Association. In insisting that everywhere his UNIA was established, it have a central meeting place, a coming together place. And secondly, in insisting that that place must be called Liberty Hall. Garvey was sending all Jamaicans since 1865 the signal that our purpose and our focus should be to come together in and for freedom, possibility, liberty. That's our purpose. More precisely, I would say, Garvey is telling Jamaicans that each and every relationship we create or we enter into, you can think of any relationship you want. Any relationship we create or enter into should be a Liberty Hall, a place where those persons or that person experiences, as far as we have any influence over it, fertilizing their possibility, opening up possibility for them. We have no other motive for going into people's lives. And that is anybody that comes across your path, not the people you pick. As Dr. Herbert Gates said, take your time, think about it. Think about it. In this way, Garvey points us, Jamaicans, to the foundation laid in the lives of our founding generations into and through Sharp, reinforced in Bogle and the generation of 1865, and lying hidden and undervalued in the generation of Jamaica. That is how those saw themselves. And I emphasize Sharp and Garvey. Personally, I think those are the two most important ones, because Sharp leads, is like the culminating point of the founding generations, and Garvey is that prophetic reminding figure that says, we don't know how we're supposed to live, we must focus on it, and here's how you focus on it. That's your compass, that's your North Star, that's your orientation, Jamaican people. Don't lose it, come back to it all the time. That is how all the heroes, though, saw themselves and how they saw us. Human beings. You know, not nothing. You're somebody who has that value. And you're no less than human beings anywhere else. That is how they valued themselves and us, willing to pay the ultimate price for embodying that way of seeing themselves and seeing us. And Garvey paid a price. He wasn't hanged, but he had a stroke. You know what help cause stroke? You know why I'm stressed over? Black people no business with themselves. That's why I'm dead early. Same thing with Marley. Stress related. Worrying because you don't see it, but we see it. It's martyrdom. That is the connection between them, those heroes, and God revealed in Jesus, how they value us, and we don't see it. Whatsoever you do to the least, you do to me. Most Jamaicans around Sharp and Bogle did not see what or how they saw, or they did not value what they saw, what those heroes saw and valued, to the point of dying for it. Most Jamaicans at the time, white and black, failed to accept the humanity of each other. They preferred to split into groups, trying to dominate, house slaves over field slaves, white planters submitting to rule from London rather than coming together with the black majority to form a new nation in freedom. And we still have that problem. There's a terribly challenging line from Mr. Siaga in an interview he gave when he left office as a parliamentarian. He was going over his work as a scholar studying Jamaican society, and the haves and have not, and the split in the society. And he said, you know, It's still a problem. And he said, we don't even like one another, and that is not how you build a society. That's a frightening line. And we're in the middle of it. Most Jamaicans did not and do not follow Garvey. We run him. When he came back here, them run him, Splingstone. And we pushed him into exile, as we do so many of our leaders, pushed them into exile in England. And he swore he'd never come back. And he died there. Why? Because most of it still are, many of us, or a significant number of us, still not so sure. Anything too black, too... You dead, man? Tell me, say you never hear it yet. You realize what year this is? And it's still a go around. The bleaching thing. We are not sure black people can build a human and humane society like any other people. We have the doubts. We don't want to talk it, but we have it. We're waiting for approval, which is never going to come. They're not business with we. You see, Puerto Rico, you watch. After this business done, you watch the talk of independence grow in Puerto Rico. Dominica better off right now. More countries and things that take care of them than them are sit down thinking that US going to come and them might never know if them is American. We have to do it for ourselves. So we sit and wait. Dead in the water. And there's some really bad signs. And I'm going to toss up some things that came to mind. You saw them in the recent news reports. There was a poll recently. Most young people in Jamaica want to migrate. Can't take it, not there, they're difficult. There was another poll I read, I forget who did it, and it was about countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. And 59%, according to this poll, of Jamaicans say they would welcome a military coup. It was the highest number in Latin America and the Caribbean. Jamaicans say, if we take it out of control, you want army if you come in, and because we don't know how to deal with it. One of the lowest numbers was from Argentina. You know one of the reasons why? Because they know what a military coup can do. When they deal with your problem, it starts to create some other problems, and you might be one of the problems it deal with. But it is a challenge. It's understandable. I don't want to trivialize and pretend it's not. It is very difficult, but what I'm trying to emphasize is difficult or not difficult. We have to come together and see our way through it ourselves, otherwise it can't work. In the 1980s, a couple of studies done by Dr. Carl Stone and Dr. Brian Meeks about Jamaican society said they saw Jamaican society facing three choices increasingly. Anarchy, complete chaos, everything falling apart. Police repression, in other words, those in charge or those who have vested interests or people from the general population said, this is out of order, send in the army and the troop, lock it down. And the third option is mass democracy. Really get serious about what Sharp and these people were saying, building a society where people in a stable way can find the resources and build a life. You know, one of the signs of that is building a stable middle class, a broad, stable middle class, which is collapsing in Jamaica. It's not there anymore. So the average person out there, these young people, them are raised themselves. They don't have nobody to look up to. It's what some scholars call the new blackness. It's a new concept, and you see it in the music. You know, you talk about the values in reggae and so on, as opposed to the values now in dance. It's a shift. So who is being respected? Who are you looking up to? Where is that? Where is that strongly embodied in the society? And some people panic. They say, well, me gone. You want to those who can't gone. Right now, you see there's a lot of movement in the anarchy. There's a lot of chaos. You see it in the driving, you see it in the murder, you see it in all kind of something. And there's also a lot of movement in the police repression. You see that tendency to, the zones and this and that. As Dr. Herbert Gale said recently, any country that is trying to develop and finds itself putting more and more emphasis on the Ministry of National Security than it does on the Ministry of Education is in serious trouble. Something wrong. The only way out is to allow ourselves, enough of us, to come together with and each other and with God. God is with us, you know that. But what kind of a God and how does God have to act when God gets down to nitty-gritty? And are we going to get into the nitty-gritty with God, which is what baptism means? You immerse yourself in the way God is immersed with you. God is with us, as Sam Sharp reminds us, for freedom, for possibility, for life to open up, life to become more abundant. It looks like it's getting more abundant. When people have work and so when you dig behind the income level, say workers in tourism, how much money are they making? Are they going to be able to save enough that they can get a house? Or you look at them something there? You yourself suffer from those things. Prime Minister made a statement the other day about the BPOs, these call centers, and talk about they have a problem finding people with the requisite training level. In other words, the capacity to receive specialized training is very low, which is my experience. Level of training, and if you want to help somebody, the foundation is not there. And that's common. This is a problem. It's like it's not coming together, it's coming apart. How do you stop it? The bishop uses the word salt. You are salt and light. Salt is important. When Jesus uses you are the salt of the earth, it's not so much for flavor. We use it for, it's like coarse. Salt. Because I am guilty, I'm as guilty as you. We need to set a target so that by so many months you meet and have a fairly good basic knowledge of every single regular person who comes to this church. You know their name, you know where they come from. Yeah. And after all, go to the one, you organize how you're going to do it. But you realize we have a big problem that people come to church and nobody don't know them. And you're supposed to come together and you can't even say, well, that one they're missing or what? Or you have the little cliques and the this and the that, whatever. None of those things matter to Jesus. Whatever you have to do, do. Whatever you stop, do. But he put these people in front of you, and he's saying, start yourself. Come together with them here first. And about to jump and go say you come together with nobody now see you, can't lie you tell. Watch the communion line. Look at all those people. You don't know plenty of them, you don't like them, you don't know business with them that much. If you and I had to draw up the list, the invitation list to come on Sunday, most of those people probably wouldn't be on the list. Not because you hate them, but they don't mean that much to you. But it's not your list or my list, it's Jesus' list. So he's saying, if you want me, you're going to want them. Start with them, and we take it from there. But coming together is a serious business. and a foolishness. And in fact, all the dynamism in church, all the fundraising, and the whole thing must be geared to make the church an effective coming together experience. Every single thing is about coming together in Jesus' way. Full stop. Allow yourselves to be drawn into Jesus' way of coming together, not your way, my way, or whoever way, or certainly not the devil way. With each other and with God, I'm here among this set of Jamaican people. Don't run. Some people at the Dickens run, you know. You know, I mean, and a priest will tell you this. Some people, you watch them now come in a church early, because they don't want nobody else to do nothing. I mean, we can tell stories about characters. They don't want to be involved. They're not really ready for church. God bless them, but they're not really ready for church. No mean that God don't love them, but they're not really at this level of leadership that any church member constitutes. So, and don't look away. You can't solve everybody's problems, but don't ignore it. And you have to be open. I know it's difficult. Well, let me say this. Each of us who, for whatever reason, whatever the circumstances, has been called to become a part of the church, the body of Christ, we should, see the word should? Watch it. We should be able to find at least one person in the church community that we can be very honest and open with. Because we're going through all kind of stuff and we need somebody that we can share with, that can challenge us and encourage us and so on. And sometimes you can't find nobody. Open your mouth, it gone down a bay faster than. The quality of the coming together is not good enough. That's important. And you can't ignore it and go on to something else. So I would say, forget all the other practices, all the other devotions and everything, and concentrate yourself on the quality of your coming together. Because you can have all the devotions you want, from January to from beginning until the end of the liturgical year, devotion for this and group for that, and live like puss and dog. It can't work. It don't make any sense. Because Jesus going to say, go away from me, I don't know you. And them don't know you either. So it don't take on too much. But the big thing, and I suspect this is going to be the big temptation. Well, you know, Sister Seraphia and Father this and those and that, so we can listen to me. Them come, them do them thing, them gone, and you, Jesus Christ, I talk to now. So forget about them and answer Jesus Christ. And that's a big problem for Jamaicans, because a lot of people, not just Jamaicans, but it's a particular problem for us. We have a problem. We think that to be somebody means we must be like this one and that one and this one group. No. To be somebody, you are the somebody that God called you to be done. And if you are the first one, you are the first one. But no matter look over your shoulder and look for approval, it's not coming. And all that's going to happen is you're stalling, and you know do what you're supposed to do. And then you have a big wish list. We wish for this and we wish for that, and we need this and we need that. But nobody knows how to do nothing to get it done. And then you leave the door open to the power people. There are some people who they know there's a need to do things, and they're willing and ready. Some of them will be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 4 months for the year, 4 weeks for the month, 12 months for the year. Very available. Anything Father need or Bishop need or whatever. But the price you pay is their way or the highway. And when them done, you don't have a church community, you don't have nobody coming together because everybody are flee. And they're not bringing any new blood because they must dominate and they suffocate, and they're not bad people, but them don't know what they're doing, and they're not ecclesial, they're not church-minded, and they will destroy the church community. Me and my battle with several of them. But you don't want to disrespect them or anything, you know. They're not bad people. And sometimes a situation is created and they drop into it. And so it's not really fair. But we really need to get our act together. And I talk about Sharp and Bogle and Jesus. I'm saying start right here. So have that in your mind, but start right here. So with you and how Jesus called you together. Start right there. And just building that little one by one, group by group. You don't worry, it'll take its own life. The Spirit will talk to you. But get that foundation laid in and between yourselves. You are Sharp. You are Bogle. You are Garvey. You are Christ. You are freedom. Amen.